On July 6, 2019, a private jet landed at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey. Federal agents were waiting on the tarmac. Jeffrey Epstein was arrested as he stepped off the plane. He was charged with sex trafficking of minors. Prosecutors said he had been abusing girls for decades. Investigators found hundreds of images in his Manhattan townhouse, evidence of a network that spanned continents. This is the story of how one man built an empire on exploitation and how the system led him. Jeffrey Edward Epstein was born on January 20, 1952, in Brooklyn, New York. He grew up in a middle-class family in Coney Island. He attended Lafayette High School. Classmates described him as smart, but unremarkable. He showed an early interest in mathematics. After high school, he enrolled at Cooper Union, and he dropped out after 2 years. He later attended the Courant Institute of Mathematical Sciences at New York University, and he left without a degree. In 1974, Epstein began teaching calculus and physics at the Dalton School. It was a prestigious private school on Manhattan's Upper East Side. He had no college degree, and he had no teaching credentials. The headmaster hired him anyway. Students later recalled that Epstein was inappropriate. He made comments about their appearance. He attended parties where alcohol was present. He left the school in 1976. No formal complaints were filed. Shortly after leaving Dalton, Epstein entered the world of finance. He joined Bear Stearns as a low-level assistant. Within 4 years, he became a limited partner in the options trading division. His rise was unusually fast. Colleagues said he was charming and persuasive, but in 1981, Bear Stearns asked him to resign. The official reason was a minor violation of securities rules. Some insiders claimed there were other concerns. Epstein never discussed it publicly. In 1982, Epstein founded his own financial consulting firm. He called it J. Epstein and Company. He claimed he only worked with billionaires. He required clients to invest at least $1 billion. Almost nothing is known about his actual clients. No public records exist. No investor has ever come forward. Financial experts who studied Epstein's wealth said his business model made no sense, yet he amassed a fortune estimated at over $500 million. Epstein lived like royalty. He owned a mansion on Manhattan's Upper East Side. The townhouse had 40 rooms, and it was one of the largest private residences in New York City. He owned a private island in the U.S. Virgin Islands called Little St. James. He owned a ranch in New Mexico. He owned properties in Paris and Palm Beach. He traveled by private jet. He attended exclusive parties, and he cultivated relationships with powerful people. His inner circle included politicians, scientists, celebrities, and royalty. Former President Bill Clinton flew on Epstein's jet multiple times. Prince Andrew was photographed at his properties. Harvard professor Alan Dershowitz was a close associate. Epstein donated millions to academic institutions. He hosted conferences on science and technology, and he positioned himself as a philanthropist and intellectual. But behind the scenes, something else was happening. In the late 1990s, allegations began to surface. Young girls reported that they had been recruited to give Epstein massages. The massages turned into abuse. The girls said they were paid in cash. Some were told to bring friends. They were promised modeling opportunities or help with school. Most were between 14 and 17 years old. The abuse allegedly took place in his Palm Beach mansion. In 2005, the parents of a 14-year-old girl went to the Palm Beach Police Department. Their daughter said she had been molested by Epstein. Detectives launched an investigation. They interviewed dozens of potential victims. They uncovered a pattern. Girls were recruited from schools, malls, and trailer parks. They were brought to Epstein's home. They were told to undress and massage him. Many reported that he sexually assaulted them. Some said other adults were present. Some said they were flown to his private island. Police obtained a search warrant for Epstein's Palm Beach residence. They found massage tables, lubricants, and photographs of young girls. Detectives identified at least 34 victims. The United States Attorney's Office prepared a federal indictment. The charges could have resulted in a life sentence, but the case never went to trial. Epstein's legal team included some of the most powerful attorneys in the country. They negotiated directly with the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida, Alexander Acosta. In 2008, a deal was reached. Epstein would plead guilty to 2 state charges of soliciting prostitution. He would serve 13 months in a county jail. He would register as a sex offender. In exchange, federal charges would be dropped. The deal also granted immunity to any potential co-conspirators. Victims were not told about the agreement. Federal law required prosecutors to inform them. They did not. Epstein served his sentence at the Palm Beach County Jail, but his incarceration was far from typical. He was allowed to leave the jail 6 days a week for 12 hours at a time. This was called work release. He went to his office in West Palm Beach. He had access to his cell phone and private security. He slept in a private wing of the jail. After 13 months, he was released. The case was closed. Victims were outraged. They had been promised justice. Instead, they watched Epstein walk free. They filed lawsuits. They demanded answers. In 2019, a federal judge ruled that the plea deal violated the Crime Victims' Rights Act. But the ruling came too late. Epstein had already served his sentence. The agreement could not be undone. For the next decade, Epstein lived quietly. He continued to travel and maintained his properties, and he socialized with influential people. Some distanced themselves after his conviction, but others did not. In public, he presented himself as rehabilitated. In private, investigators believe the abuse continued. In February 2019, the Miami Herald published a series of investigative articles. Reporter Julie K. Brown interviewed dozens of victims, obtained sealed court documents, and revealed the full extent of the plea deal. She also exposed the network of enablers who facilitated Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. The series reignited public outrage. Federal prosecutors in New York reopened the investigation. On July 6, 2019, Epstein was arrested. He was charged with sex trafficking and conspiracy. Prosecutors alleged he abused dozens of girls from 2002 to 2005. They said he created a vast network to recruit victims. He paid girls to bring him more girls. He used his wealth to intimidate and silence them. The indictment described a systematic operation designed to exploit children. Bail was denied. Epstein was held at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan. His attorneys argued he was not a flight risk. Prosecutors presented evidence that he owned 2 passports. One listed his residence as Saudi Arabia. One was issued in the 1980s under a different name. The judge ordered him to remain in custody until trial. On July 23rd, Epstein was found unconscious in his cell. He had marks on his neck. Guards revived him. He was placed on suicide watch. 6 days later, he was removed from suicide watch. He was returned to a cell without a cellmate. On August 10th, 2019, guards found Epstein unresponsive. He had hanged himself with a bedsheet. He was pronounced dead at a nearby hospital. He was 66 years old. The death sparked immediate controversy. The autopsy confirmed suicide by hanging, but questions remained. The prison had a history of staffing shortages. The guards assigned to Epstein's unit were on overtime. They allegedly fell asleep during their shift. Security cameras in the area malfunctioned. Epstein was supposed to be checked every 30 minutes. He was not. Conspiracy theories spread quickly. Some believed he was murdered. Others believed he was allowed to die. The truth is likely simpler. The system failed again. Epstein's death meant he would never face trial. Victims would never see him held accountable in court. But the investigation did not stop. Prosecutors turned their attention to his associate Ghislaine Maxwell. She was accused of recruiting and grooming girls for Epstein. Victims described her as his right hand. She allegedly befriended young girls and gained their trust. She introduced them to Epstein. She was present during some of the abuse. She denied all allegations. Maxwell went into hiding after Epstein's arrest. She moved between safe houses and avoided contact with authorities. In July 2020, the FBI found her at a property in New Hampshire. She was arrested and charged with conspiracy, enticement of minors, and perjury. Her trial began in November 2021. Prosecutors presented testimony from 4 women. They described how Maxwell manipulated them and normalized the abuse. They recounted the trauma they still carry. In December 2021, a jury found Maxwell guilty on 5 of 6 counts. She was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. For many victims, it was the closest thing to justice they would receive. But it was not enough. Maxwell was one person in a much larger network. Epstein's black book contained hundreds of names. Flight logs showed trips with prominent passengers. Documents referenced other locations where abuse allegedly occurred. Yet no one else has been charged. The case exposed failures at every level. Police gathered evidence, prosecutors had witnesses, a federal indictment was prepared, but political pressure and backroom deals derailed justice. Alexander Acosta, the U.S. attorney who approved the plea deal, later became U.S. Secretary of Labor. He resigned in 2019 after the Epstein case resurfaced. He said he was told to back off because Epstein belonged to intelligence. He did not clarify what that meant. No investigation followed. Survivors have spoken publicly about the long-term impact. Many struggle with depression and post-traumatic stress disorder. Some turned to drugs or alcohol. Some attempted suicide. They say the system treated them as criminals. Police questioned their credibility. Defense attorneys attacked their character. They were called prostitutes in court. They were minors. They were exploited. They deserved protection. Instead, they were blamed. Epstein's empire was built on silence. He used money to buy loyalty. He used threats to ensure compliance. He surrounded himself with people who looked the other way. Employees signed non-disclosure agreements. Victims were paid settlements with gag orders. Anyone who spoke out faced lawsuits. The system rewarded silence and punished transparency. His connections protected him for years. Powerful people vouched for his character. Some claimed ignorance. Others admitted attending his parties but denied witnessing abuse. Flight logs and photographs suggest otherwise. The question is not whether people knew. The question is why no one acted. The Epstein case is a case study in institutional failure. It shows how wealth and influence can corrupt justice. It shows how victims are silenced and discredited. It shows how predators operate in plain sight. Epstein was not a hidden monster. He was visible. He was well known. He was protected. Psychologists who study predators say Epstein fit a classic profile. He groomed his victims carefully. He targeted girls from vulnerable backgrounds. He offered money, attention, and opportunities. He created dependency. He exploited power imbalances. He used others to recruit and normalize the abuse. He built a system designed to protect himself and trap his victims. The role of enablers cannot be ignored. Maxwell is in prison, but others remain free. There were pilots who flew underage girls on private jets. There were assistants who scheduled appointments. There were staff who prepared rooms. There were friends who ignored warning signs. Society celebrated his wealth and connections. Complicity takes many forms. Victims continue to fight for accountability. They have filed lawsuits against Epstein's estate. They have demanded transparency from institutions that accepted his donations. They have called for investigations into everyone in his network. Some have received settlements. Others are still waiting. Money cannot undo trauma, but acknowledgement matters. In 2023, documents from a defamation case involving Ghislaine Maxwell were unsealed. They contained names of powerful individuals who allegedly visited Epstein's properties. The list included politicians, businessmen, and celebrities. Some denied the allegations. Some refused to comment. The public demanded answers. The legal system moved slowly. The question remains: how did Jeffrey Epstein get away with it for so long? The answer is uncomfortable. He got away with it because people let him, because wealth bought silence, because power shielded consequences, because victims were not believed, because justice was negotiable. Epstein's death closed one chapter, but the story is not over. His victims are still here. The people who enabled him are still here. The systems that failed are still in place. The fight for accountability continues. This case is a reminder that evil does not always hide in the shadows. Sometimes it wears a suit. Sometimes it flies private jets. Sometimes it donates to charity. Sometimes it shakes hands with presidents. The warning signs were there. The evidence existed. The victims spoke. But the system chose to protect power instead of children. And that is the real crime.